Hello, current affairs YouTube watchers, or first-time YouTube watchers. We are going to be doing a movie review, and so in honor of that, we decided that you would get to see our beautiful faces talking to you about movies, and we could do really intense reactions about things. Sparky's been practicing. So, see, that was, what was that? I don't even know.
We have lots of expressions stored up.
Yeah,
we've been saving them. I've been extremely impassive all day in preparation for this.
Storing it up. I'm sure your work appreciated that. Yeah, so we're gonna introduce ourselves, but before we introduce ourselves, let's introduce what we're doing, which is we're gonna be reviewing / commenting on Sorry to Bother You, Boots Riley's new movie. And we're all really excited. So I'm Oren Nimni. Hi.
And I'm Nathan Robinson.
Vanessa AB.
I'm Sparky Abraham.
And we are a good chunk of the staff of Current Affairs magazine, the beautiful and highly regarded leftist print periodical.
That's what they call us.
We have to be shameless.
So we're going to start off with a summary that's part of an article that Nathan wrote for this. Although one thing that I wanted to know beforehand that I was really excited about was that Sorry to Bother You is actually the name of a Coup album, and that Cassius Green, the main character, is actually taken from a song. Although if you listen to that song, it kind of foreshadows a little bit of what goes on in the movie, but you wouldn't think what goes on in the movie will go on from just listening to that song.
Yeah. And just so you know, we're going to tell you exactly what happens in the movie. So if you don't want to have it spoiled, we're going to spoil it.
We're going to make it better, but we are going to tell you. It's not going to be spoiled. It's going to be enlivened, but you are going to know what happens.
There's a lot that we're going to talk about that's important and shocking that you will not have known if you haven't seen the movie and you listen to us talk about it.
Yes, that. All right, Nathan, take us away.
So, Sorry to Bother You is a very, very weird film, and it's so any description you can give of it doesn't at all capture the flavor of the experience of it. But the essential plot of the film is that Cassius Green is a man in Oakland who takes a job as a telemarketer. He's down on his luck. He lives in his uncle's house. He has a girlfriend. They are in love. They have a very strong relationship, and he, wanting to advance his position in the world and do well and survive, takes this job as a telemarketer at a dubious and exploitative company. He does very well. He discovers the secret of doing well at this telemarketing company, which is Cassius Green is black, and he uses a white voice. He's encouraged to use a white voice on the phone, which turns out it helps him to excel as a telemarketer. He moves up the ranks. He becomes a so-called Powercaller. He goes upstairs where they make the big bucks, and it turns out that the company's actual purpose is to sell slave labor. He experiences moral conflict. He betrays his girlfriend by continuing to work for the company and crossing a picket line, and declining to join the unionization effort at the company. Then he finds out that the company is even worse than he thought. They're actually trying to turn their workers into a race of half-horse, half-human hybrids to maximize their productivity. Then Cassius finally breaks free of this company and participates in the labor uprising.
Excellent.
That was so concise.
That was really good. It's also very impressive how there are like so many little pieces of the movie that seem really maybe not really important, but kind of significant that you can't get into that. Like the fact that he becomes a viral video sensation as a result of crossing the picket line.
I forgot about that.
I tried to keep it simple.
No, that was good. But
no, the fact that his like girlfriend is like kind of weird activist performance artist. The fact that there's like this uprising going on. The slave labor that you're referencing is not thought of as slave labor in this sort of weird dystopian Oakland. It's just from this weird company where you go and you get housing and meals just for a contract of complete servitude forever. And I think at one point Cassius's uncle is thinking about going and working there because it seems like kind of a good a good option when there's no money to be made.
Yeah, I mean, Nathan made this point in his article, but like the pitch is pretty appealing. Like in a terrible world in which you like have a really hard time surviving and paying for housing, like their pitch is basically, we'll give you housing and we'll give you food, and all you have to do is like work, which is what you have to do anyway. So like worry free, it's called worry free. You don't have to worry about it. All you have to do is just work for them, and you get all your food and housing provided.
Yeah, it's extremely plausible, and I even saw a couple of comments online that said, "Well, I might take that deal if that deal were offered, because it's indentured servitude, but you never have to worry about money again." And so this company is frighteningly plausible, frighteningly close to where we are now.
I mean, we do have au pairs who I don't think have to be paid the minimum wage, and they live and are fed by their overseers.
And Vanessa, the book that you just reviewed in our new issue of Current Affairs, actually, doesn't it propose a sort of semi-indentured labor system, expanding the au pair system?
It actually, yeah, it does. It does. It's a book by, what is it called? It's called Radical Markets, Uprooting Capitalism for Better Democracy. Or it's a trick book, as you will see in my article, but it's written by two libertarians. And they tried pitching this immigration idea in the newspapers as sort of op-eds. It did not go over well. It's like
what's the idea? I can't remember exactly what the idea is.
The idea is that individuals would sponsor other individuals. You wouldn't have to be related to them, but the deal is to be sponsored to immigrate here, I think temporarily. Then you would agree to basically serve the person that sponsored you, and it would have to be a better deal than labor that you would get in the United States. So of course you'd have to pay them less than minimum wage. And they justify and like they justify it by saying that like, well, their standard of living here would be higher than whatever country they're coming from. So it's okay if they get paid $3 an hour. And also we're doing that to au pairs already. So
if we're doing it already, it must be fine.
Oh, God.
And it's legal. This is the other thing that I often see in the arguments like this. They go, there's nothing illegal about this.
Well, it's funny because like that's one model that kind of gets close to what the Worryfree company / slave labor company is in the movie. But like the other model, which you kind of talked about in your article too, Nathan, is like in some ways the movie almost would have been better if Worryfree, because in the movie, Worryfree sounds like a good deal, sort of, in that you just have to work a normal amount and then you get paid and you get your food provided and stuff. But when they have the ads for Worryfree, it's clear that it's actually really bad.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, in the ads, it looks like, Maoist China. They're all all wearing blue jumpsuits, and they're all in bunks.
They're sitting in bunk beds and eating like canned food.
And again, eating canned food and pretending to like it, but it's obviously horrifying. And one of the things I suggested was, if we actually had this, it wouldn't look horrifying. It wouldn't look disturbing. It would actually look very, very appealing. And there are ways that you could frame it that would tempt people, come join our gated community. It's a private community. And there are corporate campuses where that are sort of moved closer and closer and closer to this model. Facebook supposedly building its own little city where they rule the city, and the workers never leave the company town. And the company town model existed before. There's no reason it couldn't exist again.
Yeah, this is also in an Octavia Butler book. I wouldn't be surprised if Boots Riley had drawn it from, I want to say, Parable of the Sower, where it's a dystopian Northern California town where everything has fallen apart, but they have these company towns that you can go work for. But the idea is that you go in and you don't come out. Like, it's sort of...
Yeah, I mean, but that was the whole thing about the movie, right? It was like everything was just one step removed from reality. Like even the stuff with the horses seemed so ridiculous. But the idea that companies would, develop things to make workers more productive, and would market that, and that people would get really excited about it, and they would test it, and it would be inhumane is not that ridiculous. Everything seemed just like only one step away, where it was like, that's crazy. Oh wait, no, and that's not that weird. But I appreciated a lot of the like how close all of the elements were to reality, and I think this was both in the way that like the companies operated, but also in the way that the resistance operated as well. That it had a lot of the resistance had like all of the weird, annoying tropes of leftism, like kind of weird, ineffectual art, and like kind of odd subcultures that have, you know, like this Left Eye organization that's like maybe kind of effective, but maybe just does a bunch of graffiti, and then the graffiti ends up being bought by the rich guys anyway as like high art. Like I loved all of those little things because it's like, oh yeah, that's actually what happens. And then, you know, the union organizing campaign also reflected kind of what happens. Like it's started by a guy that goes in, that's assault, that's worked like organizing the first sign twirlers union before, and he goes in to organize the telemarketers. And then he tries to do all these one-on-ones, and it shows you a lot of great steps of how to build a union. But also like even he is kind of a ridiculous leftist male character where he's like, yeah, the things that we want are like workers' rights and healthcare, like just in case you get like an STI from like not using any protection, and like, and you're like, oh yeah, leftism, great.
Yeah, and also the power moves that he's making on Cassius Green's girlfriend. I don't know if that was intended commentary on the left, but we also do have our share of like skis balls, squeeze balls. For the listeners, I guess the union organizer's name is Squeeze.
Because his name is Squeeze.
That was my joke.
Well, that I don't know, that romance was a little bit weird as a plot device, because it kind of, I sort of expected that maybe it would go somewhere that it didn't go.
This is between the union organizer, and
between Squeeze and
Detroit.
And Detroit, yeah, and Cassius' girlfriend, because like they have this, you know, there's this kind of tension the whole time, and then they have this moment, and then I mean, maybe this is like a point of realism or like of empowerment or something for her, where she's just like, yeah, like she tells Cassius like we hooked up, and then, but it's not going anywhere. And then I think she ends up back with Cassius at the end. Like, I almost kind of expected it to go somewhere, and like that.
But Squeeze is awful, and Cassius is great.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, well, is Cassius great?
Is Squeeze awful? Is Cassius great? Like Cassius gets a bunch of credit for like doing the union for like fomenting rebellion at the end, but you know he took a bunch of money in the middle.
Yeah, and dude had to see literal horse people. Like he was fine with selling slave labor.
Yeah.
The horse people.
He was not fine with it.
I mean, he had some
porn as he cashed his checks.
I mean, to be fair, Cassius is like complicated, right? Like there is a real tension that I think people feel between like the evil thing that they need to do to make money and like provide for their families and their loved ones versus, you know, the thing that accords with their principles. And everyone other than Cassius seemed to think that it was fine to do the normal telemarketing, right? The stuff where you're not selling slave labor, but you're still doing some kind of like annoying corporate-y thing that's not particularly good for society.
On the first floor, the products they're selling are just sort of useless, but
relatively
neutral. But you're still trying to sort of scam people. It seemed like they were sort of a scam.
But like everyone was fine with that. Like Detroit was fine with that. Squeeze was fine with that, as long as you're unionized in that. And I think that presented like one of these real conflicts, which is like under capitalism or in a dystopian society when you have to kind of do something to make money. Like, what's your line of how much evil you're going to do? And how much are you going to resist that the opposite way? And obviously Cassius's line was, I'll pretty much do anything except for horse people. And I'll get really excited about my Oakland apartment that's really fancy.
Which is very realistic, because I think there are a lot of people who we might even, you know, like and respect, whose line would be something close to horse people. And you were saying that you know, this thing where it's, you know, very, very close to existing reality. You know, when it comes in the real world, it's not going to be horse people, but it might be pills. It might be, you know, productivity maximization drugs, which are already a huge part of Silicon Valley culture. And the other thing that is extremely plausible is the way that the central capitalist villain himself operates. This is Steve Lift, the CEO of the Worryfree Corporation, who offers people indentured servitude in exchange for economic security, and then sells the labor overseas. And Lift himself is a classic libertarian tech bro, and he justifies all of his conduct in the exact same ways that they would and do, by saying, I'm contributing to economic growth, I am giving people jobs, I'm helping the economy, but productivity's up, wages, well, I know wages, but, but, like, we are contributing to the world. People are making a consensual bargain, right, where they are joining the Worryfree Club. It's not clear that they're consenting to become horse people, but they signed a contract. They said we could do whatever we want if we kept them alive. We're doing it. So what's the objection?
Yeah, there's a great scene where he has Cassius watch a video of what the horse people are going to be like. And Cassius is like freaking out and doesn't want to be part of any of this, and he's the main villain just keeps being like, no, sit, watch the video, just watch the video. And at the end of the video, Cassius looks horrified, and the main villain's like, I just wanted you to see that so you would understand that we're not doing this for no reason. It's rational. And that was just a beautiful line where you're like,
such a good scene.
No, it's all about maximizing profits. It's not that we're doing something crazy here. It's not like I'm not
evil.
How can it be evil if we can justify it?
Yeah, I'm not doing it for no reason.
Yeah, like, come on.
Oh, and the whole setup to that is so good too, because it's like, like Cassius like stumbles upon the horse people, and then he like comes back and he's horrified, and the villain like has his gun out or something, and he's like, I just really wish that you'd seen the video before you saw that. Because like that would have made this whole thing totally different. And I guess like I don't know. I mean, this is a question about like Cassius and where his line is, but is that like, maybe that's true for some people. Maybe that video would have made things different.
Yeah. I mean, I know that, Nathan, you keep saying that like we're getting close to that line, but I feel like we're already there. Like we have people whose jobs it is to like shackle pregnant women in prisons, and like pregnant women in labor. We have people who have graduated from the same, law schools that we graduated to, whose job is defending produce companies that like hire death squads in Latin America to like threaten villagers who won't sell their land or let their lands be like, we already have, know people doing this work, and we're already there.
And another point that I made in the article is that even this indentured servitude model itself exists in certain places around the world, right? The shocking thing is that it's Americans signing up for it, but there are plenty of workers building buildings in Dubai who have signed up for a similar kind of turning their whole life over to a company. And if we take the video to be the process of getting used to something, then I think it's absolutely true that if you ease people into accepting something as normal, it has a nice glossy video, it has, it's very well produced. It's true that once you go through the process of seeing that, it becomes normal.
Can I tell you guys my indentured servitude story with Amazon?
Oh my God.
Yes, please.
In the winter of 2008, my family forced me to like go on a trip to Africa for like 5 weeks. And I was like, well, that's usually the time that I use to like work full time so that I can actually afford my books next semester, along with like, gas money and stuff. So I was like, okay, I have 3 weeks left in the semester. I have to make a bunch of money really quickly, and Amazon is hiring a bunch of seasonal workers. This is in northern Nevada. They have a facility like an hour and a half from Reno, Nevada, like just somewhere in the desert. And it claimed to pay something like $15 an hour for the night shift, and then 1.5 times for overtime. So this is back in 2008. So it's like, okay, all I have to do is get in line, apply, take a test. I took the test, and the person who handed me my score back was like, wow, this is the highest score we've ever seen here. Which was like, it was so basic. But I aced the test, and I get a job with them. So I'm working full-time. So I'm going to school full-time during the day, and then my shift is supposed to start, I think, at like 6 p.m. So it's like 6 to 3 a.m. Right. And they offered to have these massive buses take us from Reno to where the facility was. And I used to
nice of them.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll do the bus so that I can sleep on the way there and on the way back, you know, and then like 3 a.m. I can get back to Reno by like 4:30, sleep, and then be in class by 9:30. It was an insane plan. So we get bused to the facilities, and at first everything was going fine. I want to say like the first week our shifts would end at 3 a.m. and then we'd get bused back and it was fine. Towards like the second week, they started doing this thing where at 2:30 a.m. there would be, oh wait, I should back up. This is like super hard labor. You're in this massive warehouse and I was a picker. So you're just walking miles and miles all night, fulfilling orders, taking them to the conveyor belts, going back, picking items off. So you're just like walking miles. You're exhausted by the end. 2:30 a.m. intercom comes on. Mandatory overtime. I think I don't think any of us signed anything agreed. Think about it. They have bused you to the fucking desert. Where so we would work until 6 a.m. And like by the third week, I was like a zombie. There were times when I was at the facility where I would be pushing my little cart and I would just wake up like 200 yards later and like not remember how I got there.
Oh my God.
And so are you saying time and a half didn't compensate you effectively for this?
They would compensate us, but the idea that like any choice was involved in it was just farcical.
Mandatory overtime is going to be the call right before the apocalypse. Everyone will hear that.
Yeah, that's like somewhere
so disturbing.
In movie terms, that's like somewhere between Worryfree and like the game show I got the shit beat out of me.
Which is another feature of the film.
Yeah, there's all these
recurring moment is
but the mandatory overtime thing actually, other than terrifying me, brings up this other nice thing about the way that the movie talks about labor, which is that the ways that the bosses control the workers and also the way they try to bust the unions are all also really realistic. So like I remember back when I was taking labor law in law school reading this book called Confessions of a Union Buster, which is actually really excellent and I would recommend everyone read it, which is written by this guy that used to work for a union busting firm about all the different tactics that they would take. And it was like he had busted a number of unions or whatever, and that was sort of what was going on in the movie, right? Like the union starts off with the low-level workers. They have this like 2-hour call stop where they all hang up their phones, and then immediately the like low-level supervisors threaten to fire everyone, but also pick out Cassius to promote to like, you know, cause division in the workers, and it works really well. Like Cassius ends up getting more money and then crosses the picket line. If they were really doing it right, they should have fired a couple of workers. Like they should have fired Squeeze. It was like really realistic how Squeeze went around starting to organize this union, but also how what the company's response is, which is it's not always just like pure terror. It's also like pick out a few people and be like, no, you guys are special. You can get like $12 an hour. No, you can get $15 an hour.
Well, it's carrots and sticks, threats and flattery is the way this is the way bullies always work, is the mixture of, you know, you're not doing it well if you just threaten people. You have to also sidle up to them and tell them to come with you and flatter them and tell them they're wonderful.
And I liked that they had one character in there played by Donnie Glover, not Donald Glover.
Danny
Glover.
Danny, yes. Who knew the secret to become a Powercaller. He had a really good white voice.
Was his also David Cross? Were they both David Cross?
What was Patton Oswalt?
Oh.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I thought wasn't Patton Oswalt
Mr. Blank.
Oh,
Mr.
right.
Blank, yeah.
White voices.
They might have both been David Cross.
I saw in the credits that who's that guy with the really extremely famously obnoxious voice? I saw him in the credits.
Gilbert Gottfried?
Yes, Gilbert Gottfried.
I like how we all knew.
I think I saw him in the credits. I don't know. We could probably look it up. But
Interesting.
Anyway, sorry.
But this is a character who could be making more money. I think he knows what's being sold up there because he's been at the company a long time, and yet it seems it's never truly addressed in the movie, but it seems like he's made a conscious choice to not sell out. Like there are some things he cannot live with, and so he's just not going to cross that line for himself. And then when the union does organize, he like enthusiastically signs up.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely seems to know at least something about what's going on out there, right? Because there's that moment when they're in the bar and Cassius is asking him about what it means to be a Powercaller. And he goes, oh, it's a totally different, like, he says, oh, you're selling a totally different thing. And Cassius kind of goes, oh, you mean like apples and oranges? And he goes, more like apples and Holocaust, which is just like, it was a great line.
Speaking of the bar, I love that scene with the VIP room where the perks of success are just
like the movie is so like rich and layered in so many ways, where it kind of like starts off with Congress decreeing that worry-free is not slave labor, like doesn't violate the 13th Amendment. And then it kind of comes full circle where like Cassius has to go on I get the shit beat out of me. And he gets on it by virtue of being a viral star from getting hit in the head with the Coke can while crossing the picket line. But then like also the woman who hit him in the head with the Coke can while he was crossing the picket line, like totally sells out and like merchandises herself. And like all the kids have the wigs with the Coke can.
Oh God, I forgot.
And the other thing is the fact that when he finally exposes the horse people, and when he finally manages to get it on television, he gets to they don't keep him off television, and he even gets to do interviews on major networks. Yeah. It's not like the major networks exclude him. They publish his story. It's just that nobody cares, and the stock price of the horse people company soars.
Yes.
That was my favorite part of the movie, I think. It reminds me of like what happens with like, I don't know, private prisons or like mass shootings.
Yeah.
That cycle afterwards where like the stock always goes up on the foundation of horror, and it's fine. No one cares.
And no, I mean, I really felt like one of the sort of overriding themes in both of the small, like in both tiny ways and big ways throughout the movie was just a study of hypocrisy. Like you have sort of, you know, Cassius being a hypocrite, a huge hypocrite, but you also have Detroit kind of selling her art by like putting on, you know, a different accent and kind of being a hypocrite as well. You have like people, you know, like things that people should care about, and then like obviously just no one cares. You have the like low middle manager who has the like Circle A anarchist tattoo, but is still just a dick of a boss, being a hypocrite. Like you have all of these like, oh, here was the like people knew that this thing was wrong, and they still did it anyway.
One of the points made in a famous book by a certain author who shall remain nameless called Manufacturing Consent is that the difference between the way dictatorships control information and the way democracy or pseudo-democracies like the United States control information is that it's not that the information isn't allowed to be heard in the democracy. It doesn't explicitly suppress information. So this is why I love the thing where it actually gets exposed. All the stuff is printed in the newspapers, and this is what you find in the United States. I mean, all of the atrocious things, they're not kept out of the newspapers. They're in there. It's just that people's attention is directed away from things that are actually very obvious and available for everyone to see and read. Speaking
of which, the horse dicks. Apparently, there were a lot of them, and I left the movie, like Sparky mentioned it, we were with like 5 other people. Everyone was like, wow, the horse dicks. And I was like, I didn't see them.
Where were the horse dicks?
Oren, you didn't see the horse?
I was like noticing all these other little things, like the left eye thing I was talking about. But where are the horse dicks?
Every time you saw the horse people, their humongous horse dicks were like prominently featured.
Oh, that's true. Actually, sorry. I know you're right. I remember the horse dicks.
I was looking at the faces. I thought the faces were disturbing.
I mean, I feel like there was at least one shot where it was like, it like panned from the face, like just down the horse person to the giant dick.
Interesting. I am clearly a person on whom dick pics are wasted.
I didn't see it either. But you know the psychology experiment with the basketball game and the gorilla, where they tell people to watch the video of a basketball game and to keep track of who has the ball. And a gigantic gorilla walks across the screen of the video halfway through, and nobody actually notices that this has happened when you ask them after, or most people who watch the video don't notice because their attention was being directed away from this incredibly obvious thing that was happening right in front of their eyes.
Yeah, I mean that's part of what it is, but the other part is just in terms of like the difference in the way you handle information is probably what you were talking about earlier with the video, right? Which is like if you can just be introduced to things in a way that makes them seem either reasonable or inevitable, you become desensitized to them very quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. I guess I thought the horse people. I think I was too distracted by the name that they gave the horse people. Like they keep calling them. What do they call them?
Equisapiens.
Equisapiens instead of work horses. They're work horses. The pun was just glaring in my face all the time.
Oh, God, there was so much. I really did not expect the horses. I was like, this movie's weird, and then I was like, oh, this movie's really weird.
So you learn more about labor politics from this film than you would from years of watching CNN and probably even reading the New York Times.
And documentaries. Yawn, so boring.
And you also learn more about race politics. One thing we didn't talk about was that sort of rap scene and also the race politics running throughout it.
Yeah, let's talk about the racial element because it's easy to dwell on that because it's such a late. We were mentioning in a previous conversation we had about this film that you can almost forget the satire on race in America because the labor politics is such a foregrounded part of it. But race comes back as this huge element in the film in the scene where Cassius is asked by the CEO of Worryfree at a party he's having to perform a rap for the group.
Right. I mean, it's so like it's such kind of like a realistic, like an absurd but realistic progression, right? Because like when they're going up there, Mr. Blank tells him like, oh, never drop the white voice. But like when they get up to this party where it's Steve Lift or whoever and like all the super fancy people and I think they might be all white. I can't remember if they're all white except for Cash,
all white.
Mr. Blank. And like, they all want to hear from him and they want to like hear about what he's into, except like he has to, like, they want him to be real with them. And there's that scene where they're kind of like sitting around and he has to like sit in the middle and talk to them. And then the demand for him to rap comes.
Well, yeah, they want him to be like they like want him to be what they think Black is.
Yeah.
And it's also this weird thing where I think there are two Black people at the party. There's Mr. Blank and then there's Cassius. And Mr. Blank is like sort of the first Black entrant into the company where he like has had the white voice on forever and he's like, sacrificed his like all of his radicalness, and that's sort of like level one. And then Cassius comes in as the next person. They're like, oh no, we want you to be Black in this particular way. And then they just start shouting, like rap to him. And he's like, I can't rap. I don't, what are you doing to me?
Like for their consumption. But I think race politics also comes up earlier in the movie in a sneaky way. So when Langston, who's played by Danny Glover, teaches Cassius Green how to do the white voice, and Cassius Green kind of messes with it a little bit. And then Langston says, no, you have to like really embody it. Like, he was like, talk like you don't have any bills to pay, like talk like you don't need this job. You're going to go, you're playing squash after this. Like, and I thought, like, I really related to this part of the movie. Like, just the two, I guess, there's like a worry-free version of white people that I sort of grew up imagining. And I feel like Danny Glover's character was saying, tap into that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like live the privilege.
Yeah. Like even in this shitty job, we're not all, all have the same concerns.
Mm-hmm. That's real.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some other thing about just the rap scene I was like, that also was like a not that far from reality thing. Like I've definitely been at like work things where there's not that many people of color and where everyone's expected to like perform, sort of this like what you would normally think is like a non-professional thing, but then like you have to perform in like a Christmas party or something. It's like quite upsetting.
Oh, that's an interesting point about the way that also goes the way that when companies buy your labor, they buy your personhood, and increasingly. And the one that comes up a lot is the I think it was Pret a Manger had the contract where you have to not
smile.
just no, it's not just that you have to smile, it's that you have to smile and mean it.
Oh, right. You have to be authentic.
That was what separated that contract from the others. A lot of companies will require you to smile and appear happy, but what they had said, I think it was. I don't want to accidentally slander.
No, it definitely.
I eat at Pret so much, and the employees are so nice.
Because they hire people who have to mean it. They can't just fake it.
Not in Boston, but I wouldn't want them to. Not in Boston. They do not mean it, or nor are they happy.
The Boston exception.
The boss wants to be your friend. You have to be authentic. You have to turn over. You can't just go and do the job. It's not enough. This is why selling yourself or selling your soul. It's not just labor. It's not just a job.
I think the performance aspect is one of the reasons why I've avoided, we have this like diversity committee at my job, and sometimes they'll have like these kind of potlucks where you're supposed to bring food from like your culture or something, and it's just like, I don't know. This is
weird. We also have those.
Yeah. Won't do it. I'm probably missing out on some like bomb ass food, to be honest.
Maybe.
So it's
that's possible.
I mean, if they're gonna make the food, shouldn't I just show up and have it instead
Eat
of
the food?
So are there any other important social commentary aspects of the film that we've overlooked?
Almost certainly.
Failed to comment on. So
it was so rich.
So many layers.
It was, yeah.
I was told that we would get to experience with ASMR on video before breaking. So that's what I'm squeezing in. To all our ASMR fans, you're welcome.
Do you just have to talk like
that? Have to like talk in really soft tones, like you're at the library.
Oh, that's lovely.
Nathan's face.
What is ASMR? I think my sister has told me about this, but I don't know what it stands for.
I have my Google open.
One of my old roommates was very into the videos, and
it's autonomous sensory meridian response. It is an experience characterized by static-like or tingling sensation. I think that's what we saw Nathan do.
Yes, I got the tingles
on the skin. Typically begins on the scalp. Holy shit, this is very detailed. Moves down the neck and upper spine. It's been compared to auditory tactile synesthesia. It's basically people who get orgasms from hearing people speak in very low, soft tones.
That's so nice.
I have nothing else to add on the movie other than people should go see it. Go support Boots Riley. This is a good effort. It's not a perfect movie, but
it's quite a good.
I thought it was a very, but it is the best movie.
The politics are excellent. Right. I don't know. I love Boots Riley, and there's also there's like some little smatterings of cool music in there, which are
there's a lot of cool. I thought there was a lot of cool music. I'm kind of like, I hope and sort of expect that if this movie continues to do well, that the Coos music will be more popular as a result of this than it has been in the past. Despite the fact they've been around since like the early 90s or something. They've been around forever.
Yeah, no, I hope that the Coo will get popular. I quite like the Coo, and Boots Riley's dad is also a semi-famous radical attorney in Oakland, and I just feel like they are like doing good shit in Oakland.
Privatized security firms. That was another thing that was in the film. Sorry, I forgot the role of privatization of the police.
Oh yeah,
that's true. Yeah, because the private security like busts into
they bust in. They carry him into the office every day past the picket line.
That's right.
Oh, and the police brutality.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Very well done.
Sorry, Vanessa, I interrupted you to say something.
Oh no, that's all I had to say. I thought it was great.
Now I'm just reveling in Sparky's point actually about the woman who hits Cassius in the head with the soda can selling out. Then like she's like a protester, and then she just like makes. How does she make all of her money? She just like becomes a TV star,
because
or
the wigs with the cans in
she
it
just sells the wigs.
sold, and then it's just like a sensation at Halloween.
I think that she also becomes like a spokesman or a spokesperson.
Oh, for the soda, right? Yeah.
She's like, have a Coke and smile, bitch, or something. She throws it.
Oh my god, that was so good. That was so good.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to understand the world as it is today in all of its many dimensions, it's probably somewhere in.
I love all those little elements where it's like, where there's like a little bit of resistance and it's immediately appropriated. And there's a lot of that going back and forth.
So 2018. We should get Pete, please, if you're listening, you should close the episode with a cool coup song. I don't know that I know any. We can introduce our listeners to it.
Yeah, go for some deep cuts.
Go for some deep cuts, or like I don't know. I like the Sorry to Bother You album too. Like that has some.
Yeah. People see, and it's got what's his name? Fuck, the guy that plays Cassius.
Lakeith Stanfield.
Lakeith Stanfield. Yeah, he's on the album.
I realized, by the way, when I said Cassius was great, that I was giving Cassius a lot of points that were earned by Lakeith Stanfield's character on Atlanta. But he's so likable and wonderful that I assumed that Cassius was in part.
No, Cassius is not.
Cassius is
as daring.
Yeah.
He's also wonderful in Get Out, which
yes,
a lot of people have seen, but
I immediately watched the rest of the second season of Atlanta, though, after watching Sorry to Bother You, just because I wanted more Stanfield.
More of Lakeith Stanfield, because he's incredible. All right. Well, let's sign off and say goodnight to our many thousands, millions, even.
Yeah, thanks for watching our first YouTube video.
Subscribers and fans.
If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your friends. We need to match Jordan Peterson's numbers if this is going to work.
We're getting close.
We need you
to
work for us for free.
And also, subscribe to the magazine. Go on Patreon.
To Current Affairs, the magazine, the finest of.
It's real. This isn't even the new issue.
This is. I was just. That was the one I had.
That's my favorite issue. So
that's the one. That's the one that said dedicated to Sparky. Actually, it's a tribute. It's a tribute to Sparky's marriage.
It is a really good issue. Although that picture terrifies me. There's a lot of members that had a lot of debate where I was like, "Oh God, that's too scary," and Nathan was like, "No, we'll do it."
There's a lot of skulls on the cover. Anyway, thanks, listeners.
Patreon, go on to it.
Go and donate on the Patreon. Then we can make more things.
Yes, please.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye everyone. Good night.
Nice to see you.